Whoa. Oh, there's the camera. Okay. I've been gone for a while. I have to remember where stuff is, like me. Um, so this is, this, as it says, is a, what was I doing? Wednesday. I know it's Wednesday, but having been gone for a couple of weeks and not working on all of whatever is here, I have to remind myself where I am in as far as progress goes. I also have these things, which is a big chunk of rock. At least that's what it's supposed to turn into and look like. That's been primed. And these that I think are supposed to be flames. I'm pretty sure that's what they're supposed to be, but I can't really remember, so I'm going to have to check. And if they are flames, then I might start painting these, because I think that would be kind of fun to do. Making this look like a big rock, was just getting probably some gray wash and going over the whole thing with wash, and then go over it with some highlights. And then when I did this once before, I got to try to flick little bits of spots of paint all over it, which made it look spotty. So that's something I'll eventually be doing. I also, this, I can't forget this. This is me. This is a much enlarged, like 4 times the size of my Dungeons and Dragons figure, Ulseth Ralph the Furbog Fighter. And this was made for me as like a desk model, and it's an exact replica of the minifig that we use for me in the Dungeons and Dragons campaign, just made larger. And this was printed on our new filament printer. It's it was kind of a test to see how it did with detail, and it did really well. So at some point I can paint this. So I've got a lot of stuff to do. And then of course there's the Savoia S.21 Porco Rosso's plane. I'm going to set these aside here so I can show you where that is, because then I have to remember. I do remember that parts in process are in this tray, and parts that are done are in the done box, which is over there somewhere. And the parts that are done, that's right, I was able to turn the page. I did page 1 of the instructions. I remember that now. All of this detail in the cockpit and everything else, and Porco Rosso goes inside of it. Yep, that was quite a struggle, getting all of this to be put together, and then having to take it all apart again and reshape the parts and then put it back together. Getting the engine together, that went pretty well. There were a lot of little steps to it in order to get the detail painted and everything, but that got done. So all of this detail, just to remind myself and everyone else, is that the upper part of the fuselage of the Savoia S.21 lifts off, comes off of the model, and then it reveals the inside of the plane. Okay, the cockpit and all the detail in the cockpit, all the little control mechanisms and the rudder pedals and stuff, the fuel tank, the machine gun holders, the wooden frame. Okay, so I spent forever getting that done. At least that's how it felt. But I did get this done fairly quickly. And I was kind of happy. I got the seams sanded out nicely, did some detail on the old Brogger, suggested that I use some wash on some parts of it instead of a darker color, and that worked out pretty well. So I remember now that I finished this. It's in a box over there. It hasn't fallen on the floor and broken yet. And now I turn the page, and I'm working on the enclosure for the engine, and the radiators and the exhaust pipes. And that's what's under here. Yeah, that's it. Okay, these are the exhaust pipes. And these are the parts of the enclosure for the engine. I very carefully tested it. I remember I assembled these three parts. Okay, these three parts, just using rubber cement to test fit to see if I could get the engine in after they were assembled. That was important because once they're put together, there will be seams that need to be filled and sanded out so that this whole thing can be painted without the seams showing. And if I put the engine in first before I paint it, right, and it has to be painted inside and out. If I put the engine in before that, it's a very, very difficult masking task. But I can put these parts together and paint them inside and out, and then get the engine in, which is good. And I also tested that. I remember that. This is like a cover, and it goes over the back part of the engine, and I wanted it to not be cemented on. Because if you can lift it off, it's like a repair hatch, a place where you can lift it off to repair things inside. It's this. And if that can just be set on there and sort of stay in place, then you can take it off to see the detail of these bits back here. And it was like, why put these on and paint them in detail if you can't ever see them because they're buried under here? So I'm going to leave that up. The very front part, this, okay, can be painted before it's put on because it's obviously designed to be a separate piece, not like the novel. It's not that kind of separate piece. It's a distinct item or a separate piece, and it's obvious. It's designed actually to come on and off again for purposes of maintenance. But if there's a seam around it, then it makes sense, just like there is back here. But it's this part that I don't, especially on the back here, the curved parts, okay, and where it joins up on the bottom. I don't want those to be, I don't want seams to show there. And if you look at them, you can see that there's these blobs on them. Those blobs are there because I was making an effort to fill in the mold marks that appear way, way too often on these plastic models, these circles. Sometimes they're raised circles, sometimes they're depressed circles. These were lower, okay? They were like indentations. And I think they're ugly. When I was making the submarine, they were all over the place. And when I was making the Apollo, they were all over the place. And if they're raised, I can sand them out. And that's a good thing if they're raised. But if they're inset like this, then I fill them and then sand it down so that they show as little as possible. They still kind of show no matter what, but they're. So it looks like I'm going to be doing a fair amount of sanding because there's 5 of these and they're not in really easy places. All these surfaces are curved, or like in this case, it's inset inside of something else. So this is going to be a sanding day. And yeah. Oh yeah, I did get the radiators done. I cemented those together, and they're ready to be primed. And I didn't prime them before I left. If I had primed them before I left, then I could work at painting them, but I didn't, so I can't. Yeah, they came together top and bottom, and the yeah, I got the seams. Oh, maybe not. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm gonna have to check these out again to see what's going on. I thought I got the seams, got rid of the seams, but And it seems that the seams are still showing. So I'll do some sanding on those too, probably. Yeah, so it's not going to be much painting on relaxing painting. It's what we're painting is nothing. What we're doing is sanding the filler out of these indentations and checking out to make sure that the seams are not real obvious on these radiators. Then they can be primed, and then there'll be a two-step process of painting them, several parts. Well, all of them actually. The insides of all these pieces, okay, the insides of them. This is a metal enclosure, and so the inside is the bare metal, so it's going to be painted metallic, probably the aluminium color. From Europe, that's how they spell it, aluminum color on the inside of all of these parts. And then that'll be very carefully masked and then spray painted red around the outside. And the radiator, oh yeah, and then parts of the radiator, they're painted gold for a reason I'm not sure why. If I could see, can't read up things up close. 8 is chrome silver. It was painted gold. 9 is gold. 8 is chrome silver. Okay. So the radiator parts here, the ridged parts, are painted metallic. Okay, I'm glad I checked that. It's the bottom here, the ridged bit on the bottom of this at the very front. There's ridges there, if you can see them. Okay, those are painted gold. So the process I'm going to use for that, when I finally get around to it, I'm talking about it now so that I don't have to actually do it. The process I'm going to use is to paint the metallic on the inside of all the parts, paint the metallic, this is after they're primed, on the radiator grids, okay, and then mask all of those already painted parts. Oh yeah, and the gold on the bottom here, the gold on the ridges there, which is number 9, gold leaf. And then carefully mask those areas and then spray paint the red paint on all of it. It's a nice glossy red. But I need to do the prep work on these parts first. Oh, and then the exhausts are painted, they're kind of a nice gunmetal color. The 6-cylinder engine, so there's like 2 inlet and out, 2 for each one. Okay. What I'm going to try to do with those is, if you've ever seen like a chromed metal exhaust pipe and the engine runs, it gets really hot. It takes on kind of a blue color. It's kind of a bit of a blue. And I tested, I recall that now. I tested like 5 different things. Pearlescent blue, a blue wash, and actually what turned out to work was a speed paint. Not that I want it to be like various different colors necessarily, but if I dry brush that on, I can like get the exhaust, maybe make it look like it had been heated up. And if it doesn't work, then I'll just prime it again and paint it again. And then instead of looking like some of these pipes were heated, it'll just look like it does now. Yeah, that's the thing. That's what's going to happen. I remember that now. I'm not sure how long this is going to take. It may be that it is going to take me forever to sand these things down to an acceptable point, or it could happen quickly. And if that does happen, then I'll prep these for priming. And the way I do that is like this. I tape. I'm not going to use painter's tape because I have to prime it on both sides. And sometimes that tape will take the paint off, but I have some other tape that doesn't take any paint off. These will be taped down onto a piece of cardboard. And the reason I do that is because they're very small. And when they're sprayed, they just go flying. I've had pieces almost get lost because they're so light. So they'll be taped down. Maybe I'll probably use a little bit of cardboard that's bigger than this. Yeah, that's right. These are numbered. 3 and 6, 4 and 5, because they go on. They go on differently. Looking at the instructions here, it's going to be hard to mess it up, but it is possible I could flip them over and get them on the wrong sides. So this one is 4 plus 5, and this one is 3 plus 6. 4 plus 5, 3 plus 6. 4 plus 5 goes on the left or port side, and 3 plus 6 goes on the right side of the engine cowling. I'm going to have to make sure I keep those numbers. What I may end up doing, just had a thought. So because if I spray paint those, it'll spray, prime them, it'll paint over the numbers. But if I put a little piece of tape over the number, then when I take the tape off, the number will still be there. I think that'll work. I've often said that this is not a how-to show for experts. If you really want to be learning how to do expert level modeling, you need to watch a show like Old Brogger's stream. He makes all sorts of amazing models and does great painting and things. But if you really don't know what you're doing, okay, this is a show for people who really don't know what they're doing at all. This is a how to do something more than not knowing what you're doing at all. Okay, so little things like that, like if you have to keep the parts separate, so you keep them on numbers and you don't want to cover up the number, then you can tape over the number and the number would be there. Okay, that's a thing you could do that you just learned on this stream if you didn't know anything to begin with. For those of you who do know things, you'll know that I'm probably not doing things right, or I'm doing things very inefficiently, or stuff like that. But old dogs, new tricks, that kind of thing. Wraps of sandpaper here, trying to decide. We're sanding these down. I think I need to use like an 800 grit. Which is fairly fine. I don't know. I've only sanded this particular filler down once before. And so I'm not really sure. No, I'll dive into it. I'll start sanding one of them. And then I'll just see how that goes. And then after this, I'll need to use a very, very fine grit, like 1500 or something, to polish it, because this will leave marks on the plastic, and it would be really hard to see them. What it does is it changes the surface texture, and so it's more matte than glossy, even after priming. And so polish it with the entire surface with like a 1500 grit, like this. Okay, so the whole thing has kind of a uniform surface texture. And that's, in this case, if I were using a matte paint, it wouldn't matter so much, but I'm using a metallic, which is glossy, and it shows any kind of thing like that. Sanding this way too slowly. I don't want to mess up the plastic underneath, so got it right. When the whitish spot is exactly the same as the circle that it filled, is to say I've sanded away the excess around it. I intentionally put excess all around it. I'm now recalling this because the filler I used was very liquid. And when the liquid evaporated, it shrunk a little bit and didn't fill completely. It left a little bit of indentation. So I built it up around the edges to make sure that it filled it. It does clog up the sandpaper quickly. Up having to use 600 grit. I don't want to. But then I've got, 2.5 hours or something to do this. If I can think of things to talk about while I'm sanding this, then it'll just be really boring sanding. Okay. This is boring, watching you just sort of ineffectively sand the filler down. If I could mutter on about something, I have to think of something to talk about. I was having that problem before I was gone for a couple of weeks, was finding things to talk about. Having done this stream for a long time now, I got to talk about growing up in the 60s, 50s, and 60s when our school basement was a fallout shelter, and we used to get maps of if one megaton bomb was dropped on the airport, because there were some military planes stationed there. How far away did you have to be to not be totally obliterated by the blast? That was always fun to talk about, and talked about fallout shelters and stuff. And I got to talk about old cars and old car maintenance. The Mouseketeer job was really easy because they didn't have to do anything. They always had other people on the show doing stuff. They just sat around and cheered them on and gave them their ears and stuff. I did that. Talked about Tom Terrific. Just not particularly interested in talking about why I was gone for 2 weeks, because taking care of a family member who had foot surgery and very limited mobility and needed to be taken to appointments and help getting around the house and stuff. That was not as relaxing as relaxing sanding. Okay, this is getting pretty close to where it needs to be. But here, I want to be careful here because there's internally some raised edges around the ports that will kind of show. There is a little lump there that needs to be sanded down. That's why I've got a broad edge and a fine edge. Not a fine edge, it's just a small edge and a big edge on this wedge-shaped piece of balsa wood that is my sanding block. This filler has worked pretty well. It dries or cures to a very hard surface, so it's sandable. One of the others I used was really quite easy to use, but I couldn't sand it. It never really hardened enough to be sanded. Which meant that it couldn't be sanded. When I tried, it couldn't be evened out with the surface, which missed the whole point of it. Okay. Well, that wasn't bad. I need to find the really fine sandpaper. It's the really coarse sandpaper. Excuse me. Well, this is old stuff, but it still holds up. It's really kind of like an emery cloth that's made for polishing cars. But it works here pretty well. The idea here is not to mess it all up, but to have the surface the same gloss, or in this case, somewhat not gloss, because I'm sanding it, so that when I put the metallic paint on it, it's uniform. Circle here that I didn't really see before. Yeah, just a little bit to see if I can make it just less noticeable. Why am I messing around with these tiny little things like mold marks and little bitty circles that are almost invisible? And the answer is, well, I know they're there, and they just mar the appearance of the model. They just do. It just doesn't look right. You look at them and notice they're there. And one solution to that is the solution that I've talked about many times, which is make sure no one gets very close. When you've finished your model, make sure that no one gets really close to it and that there aren't any really bright lights on it. Okay. That way, these kinds of things, you can't see them because they're too far away and the light's too dim. I think that's a perfectly fine solution to this kind of thing. Kind of recommend 18 inches. Don't get closer than 18 inches to the model. And definitely don't put like little miniature spotlights and stuff on it. You don't want to do that. Unless there's something that you did really, really well. Like, I really nailed this part. The next thing to perfect. And then you might want to show that off. Especially if there's a part that you say, oh, this didn't turn out all that well. And you put the little spotlight on the thing that turned out really well. Okay. And not on the one that didn't turn out really well. And lo and behold, people will look at where the spotlight is and not try to peer into the shadows. When I paint my minifigs, I've been told that, I'm not really good at like shading and stuff. I'm just really not that good at it. Not like Nicole, who is actually an artist and learned art techniques and things. My skill isn't as growing up as an artist I was really good at staying in the lines. I was really good at when I was coloring. I stayed in the lines. Grown-ups liked that in a kid. Oh, yeah, you did a great job. You stayed in the lines. And other kids were, you made a mess. You're all over the place. You used weird colors. Got outside the lines. Those kids were creative, and ended up having ideas and fun and stuff. Those of us who stayed inside the lines were not creative and never learned any techniques other than using just the right color and staying inside the lines. There. That only took forever, which was fine. So this is like a before and this is an after. And you can see that there's still a little bit around the edges there. I think this side is maybe raised up a little bit. I don't know if I should. Stick is higher up there. It's a result of the weird. Looking at it, I'm just getting light reflections on it. The plastic is actually higher up around here. Raised surface. I don't know. I'm not sure I really like that. You know, that's the way it was molded, or whether that's kind of the result of the filler. Do this one and see how this looks when it's. Just looking at this, I'm supposed to wear eye protection when I'm doing this. Warning label on the sandpaper, because when you're rubbing a tiny little bit of sandpaper on a tiny little bit of plastic, who knows what's going to jump up off of there and hit your eye. I shouldn't have done that, really. I mean, you should take those kind of warnings seriously. And the way this is probably usually used, it was a good idea to wear eye protection. It's just this particular application of the use of the sandpaper seems like it's unnecessary given the distance it is from me and the amount of sanding that's happening and the fact that the dust isn't going anywhere. I did put a bit more on here than I needed to. I'm going to use the 600 grit. Going really slowly. The problem, just like I said, this is a how-to show for people who have no idea what they're doing. Okay, this is not a how-to show for people who are like adept and skilled at this sort of thing. It's not a how to move from making really, really, really good models to making incredibly excellent display quality models that would go in a museum or something. But for those of you who don't do this, what happens is with the coarser grits is it cuts faster, but it also marks the surface more. Tiny little scratches that really do make a difference in terms of the texture of the surface when it's painted with a glossy or metallic paint. And so the trade-off is that this cuts faster and sands down the excess faster, but then one needs to spend time polishing afterwards to get out the little marks. So in this case, I don't know if you noticed, I determined that the surface texture of this plastic was going to be determined by the 800 grit rather than the 1200 grit sandpaper. So it's a little bit matte. Okay, just a little bit matte. But I think that will be okay because the inside of this is when you is bare metal, but it's not really polished metal. Okay, it's just bare aluminum holding the engine in. I'm going to wash all of this with more circles in there with denatured alcohol. Not denatured alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol, the kind of thing that's used for massages, I guess. That's why they call it rubbing, I think. Because there's a lot of going to be fair, it's sort of on camera, fair amount of sanding dust on this. Yeah, it will have to go away before I paint it. These are taking a long time. The ones on here, those are going to be a real pain. Suffer along with me as I try to sand those. Well, at least it can be said that this particular filler definitely hardens hard enough to sand. That is not a question. This is the first time I've really used it on a surface like this, trying to fill in these holes. I don't think that it melted the plastic. The other filler that I use that does cure hard enough to sand melted the plastic. So it filled in the seam or whatever, but distorted the plastic all around it. It just wasn't good at all. This is pretty good. Old Brogger, who does know what he's doing and does a stream that, well, it's a real stream. It's not just surplus equipment on a workbench like I've been given, but he does a YouTube channel, and it's like really quite professional because he does a lot of recording and then takes the time to edit it and narrate it in a meaningful way instead of just jabbering on about something to fill the time because we can't play our music still. Well, that's a thing on YouTube, I guess. I'm not one much for computer media, so I just hear about this from the other members of Dyson Dungeons who know about it. Okay. I've learned how to turn everything on. And most of the time, if something doesn't work, I have learned how to get it to work. It turns out that it's really simple, but I had to learn it because I didn't know it ahead of time. But what we get our music from Alex Nakarada, who composes. He's a composer and produces music that we are permitted to use, but then YouTube apparently has some sort of like music pirates, I guess. they listen, and then they make a claim, a copyright claim for somebody else's music. And the way it works is if there's a copyright claim made, then you just can't play the music because somebody else is claiming it. And even though it's Nakarada's music, somebody else has claimed it, and so we can't use it. And so you don't hear music in the background, and happened for a long time, probably a year, because it was safer to just not play the music. And if a claim was made, then your YouTube channel could be like banished or sent off into oblivion, disappeared. The music that used to be playing on here, which was an alternative to me talking about why the music isn't playing on here. Okay, the music that was playing on here can't be played anymore, so you get to hear me talk about as much as I understand about why that is. And I think it's a shame because Nakarada's music is pretty good, and you're missing it because somebody else said it was theirs, even though it wasn't. It's all down with the 800 grit. Try to get kind of a uniform texture. And also, I'm going to worry away at this other little circle thing here to try to make it less obvious than it is, at least to smooth out the edges of it. You can really see it there. See? There's absolutely no excuse for that to exist. It's not part of the engine cowling. It's just an artifact of the molding process. Some other things, if you don't know what you're doing, and you think I do, that you could learn on this show is that other than a piece of wedge-shaped balsa wood that you can use as a sanding block, I got these needle files. They're tiny little files that are over there that I could show to you, but you can't really quite reach them. Got them under the engine, but it's still, this one's worse than the other one. The other one kind of gave up fairly quickly. This one is just being annoyingly persistent. And there's still too much filler here. So these needle files are just little files, and they're fairly fine. And they cut through this plastic because it's really soft very quickly. But, well, I mean, not really quickly, like a lot more quickly than the sandpaper. But the thing is, they really do leave sometimes scratch marks. Almost, they look, when you look at it closely, almost like gouges. And as such, I use them quite sparingly on this. I learned my lesson the hard way by making gouges and then having to spend a long time with ever smaller grades of sandpaper, finer grades, not smaller grades. I guess they're smaller. The grit is smaller, but finer grades of sandpaper. A good deal of time getting rid of the gouges. And so the time I saved by using the file quickly became lost time as I attempted to get the file marks out. Yeah, you can clearly see the circle, the other little circle there, as the dust fills in around the edges. Really discouraging that it's there. It is on the bottom of the cowling. Okay. And when the engine goes in, it'll be really quite hard to see it. This is on the top, so it'll be really quite easy to see it. And they'll see how well the filling in and the sanding went after it's primed. Each time, these surface issues, you you run your fingernail over them and it says, it's okay. And then it gets dropped on the floor. It's a whole nother story, right? At least it's large and red, unlike some of the pieces, which were tiny and black. Official, can I hold it up to the camera? Official Dyson Dungeons mug. I think you can tell that I am very annoyed by this other circle. And again, I don't know why they're there. They're definitely not part of the piece. Okay, the engine cowling did not have these little circles embedded in the metal. Just didn't. But they show up. There were some on the submarine that were really bad, like in the middle of a floor, and they couldn't put it. I mean, right in the middle of a piece of the floor of the deck. I should call it the deck, right, of the submarine. the Polaris launching submarine prototype at George Washington. If there's some way of getting the sandpaper in there a little bit more effectively. I think I will use the head. Focus the pressure on the part that I want to be sanded. Better. At some point, I'm just going to say I need to move on. I'm not quite to that point yet, but I'm getting really close. I imagine if anybody is watching this, you're way past that point now. Sorry. So these circles just keep showing up in these molded plastic pieces. They're injection molded, and I don't know why they're there. I can't. There just isn't. There can't be a good excuse for it. There just isn't. It's just wrong. It just mars the surface. And I'm sure that if one is a master modeler, does this like professionally, makes money at it, which I don't. Not unless you go to patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons, patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons, and become a patron. And then I would, not personally, but Dyson Dungeons as an organization would make a little bit of money. But anyway, oh, no, that was a New Year's resolution. I was not going to say that word. And then I did. I guess it's not too bad. I mean, I messed up once. Try not to do that again. I was using that word, I want to not be using that word with a great deal of frequency. Before the New Year's resolution to not use it with such frequency. I just failed. I had another. Okay. Not going to get any further on that. Just have to see how it looks after it's primed. I'm going to do this one next because it's really awkward. This one here. This one's not too bad. I can get at it from this side. This, I don't know how to get to it. This is the base. This is the engine sits on this. And why I even worried about these these circles here now baffles me, because when the engine is sitting on here inside of this cowling, those would be invisible. You couldn't see them. But now that they've got that filler on them, they definitely are seen, and they're not. To not bother trying to find scissors. This was just a bad idea. It's easy enough getting the filler in there. I have to be careful not to snap these little parts. These little delicate parts. If I snap those, it'll be a mess trying to fix it. Trying to get something down in there that I can use to apply some pressure to the surface that I'm sanding, because now I can see that this was a mistake. But having made the mistake, I now get to attempt to correct it. It's sort of working because I can sort of reach in the concave side here like this, and then turn it over and get it on the other side. There's friction on it. This is definitely a not how-to at this moment. This is I'm just making stuff up, trying to get this sanded down in a place where it's really hard to get sanded down. And I don't know, there's probably like a miniature power tool where that some people out there who know better have that actually lets them just zip right through this. I'm almost certain there has to be something like that I don't have, that I'm just doing my best here with a nail head and some sandpaper. I was away. Well, I don't know how long it actually took for this stuff to cure, to get this hard, because I put it in and I went away for 2 weeks. So it might have cured overnight, or it might have taken 2 weeks. I don't know. It was another downside of being away. What isn't it? Is not knowing that. I hope if I use it again, that I don't have to wait 2 weeks for it to cure. Find out when on this stream. Like I said, it's not a how-to show, but it's sometimes it's I don't know what I'm doing. Why don't you just learn along with me? We'll see if it'll work or not. And sometimes it does. There's been sometimes I've been really surprised that it was, oh, that worked. It just came right together, like the escape tower for the Apollo model. When I put it together, was this is not going to hold. I can't get this done. And it didn't turn out perfect. The pieces really needed to have been aligned better, but they were extremely tiny contact points, where the adhesive was. And I couldn't use super glue, cyanoacrylate glue, because they needed to be adjusted after they touched. And, that stuff sets up immediately. So I was using a contact cement that gave a little bit of give. It gave some give. And I was able to get them to come together to look pretty good. I mean, not perfect. Definitely not perfect, but they're not bad either. So that sometimes things like that just happen. It's like, oh, that wasn't as horrible as it could have been. This is something that isn't working out that well, which is to say that I thought, oh, I should fill that in, even though one won't be able to see it when this thing is assembled. I'll know it's there. Not anticipating, as I should have, that it would be impossible to sand it down. It's not impossible. Clearly, I am making a little bit of progress here. But just little bits of progress. I wonder if I feathered that down enough. Can't really tell. Feathered that down enough so that it isn't going to show once it's painted. Do I take in my efforts to make that circle disappear in a place where it could never be seen to begin with? You could wait until it's primed and then go, oh, it needs more sanding. Or maybe after it's primed, it'll be okay. I don't know. This one is going to be much easier because I can get to it this way. Can't say it's going to go faster. I should use the 600 grit to begin with. Do 800 over it. Way too much filler on this. kind of living and learning too about how much to use. So old Braggers put me onto this thing. It's called Green Putty by Green Putty Works or something like that. Trying to get some, and so before I left, did some online shopping because the local hobby store didn't have it. And it didn't exist. I went to the site of the manufacturer, Green whatever it was Works, and it was out of stock. And I went to the usual places, none of them had quite that. It didn't have the thing I was looking for. It had other products by the same company, but not the putty. So sometimes you can find things on like eBay, the resale site. People have some, and they're either trying to get rid of it because they don't want it anymore, but they know it's in short supply, so they buy some up and then resell it at a higher price. So a whole variety of things you get, but there was one tube of it there, but it was in a different country, and the shipping was 3 times more than the retail price of the product. So apparently it's in stock in Europe. Maybe next time I'm in Europe, right, I'll look to get some. Or I know somebody there, maybe they can find it and not send it to me because it just costs a fortune to send little bits of things. People say it's probably less expensive to send an entire shipping container full of this stuff than to just send one. That's probably not literally true. It just feels that way. Well, that's a long way of saying that I don't have that, because at least before I left, 2 weeks ago or so, it didn't exist. It didn't exist in any place I could access. Well, after this is just one more that needs to be sanded down. And I think I can get to it kind of like this. Yeah, it's not going to be it's going to be a problem. And that's one I need to get really clean, because that's a removable, this thing is a removable cover that goes on the top. And when you take it off and flip it over to look at the inside of it, I don't want it to look crummy. So I'm going to spend a lot of time getting that one right. Just warning you ahead of time that this not very relaxing sanding with Dyson Dungeons is going to I put way too much filler on that one, even compared to this. It's going to be there's going to be a good deal of not relaxing sanding. This piece, why is this bit here being so persistent? hoping I didn't inadvertently save the worst for the last. I very well may have, just in terms of how much work it's going to be to make it be okay. Just, you know, trying to polish this down so that the surface is okay. Feel it with my fingernails, so maybe it is just feathered in. Maybe it'll be okay. This one's just a mess. There's not much I can do about that. There it is, but it would just take half a lifetime. Okay, this one's just going to be a pain too, because there's this little lip here, this little this little ridge there that holds the piece in place when it's put in place. So this is going to be forever. This is going to take forever to sand this out. What shall I do to keep this interesting while I'm taking forever? Yep, obviously didn't think of anything. Nothing came out. There's obviously pretty much nothing. This is a result of my inexperience with the filler. And it's not the filler's fault. It's just like I said, when I first used it, the first time I used it, it not sure it's so much shrunk as the solvent evaporated, right? And so it shrunk as the solvent evaporated. The amount of coverage became less. So the circle didn't get filled in all the way. It got filled in partially filled. Partially filled circle still appears as a circle to the observer. Put enough in to go, to fill right up to and over the edge, which is what's happening here. There's a big blob of it on the other end, though. That the dust fills in the sandpaper. This particular brand seems to be more prone to that than one of the others that I used. Otherwise, it's pretty good. I think what happened, as it was laying down, it's tilted a little bit, so the stuff kind of oozed over. Yeah, like that. See, it just drained down. So there's a blob of it down here. That's the technical term for that excess, is a blob of excess filler that oozed down. Head of this nail does seem to get me to where I need to be, though, in terms of being able to put pressure on the spot where I'm sanding. This is going to take a while. I kind of warned everybody, right? That warning turned out to be a valid warning. I wasn't, yeah, I didn't totally anticipate the blobness of it. I'm sorry you can't see this very well on camera. I could bring the camera down closer if I can remember to stay on camera while I'm doing this. Let's see, right around this black spot. Okay. Now you can more closely see the very slow, almost ineffective progress that I'm making here. I can't say it's ineffective. It is better than it was in that it's less of a blob. There's less blob there than there had been. So that's a progress thing. Not put my knee up like that. One of the things about getting old is that things, hurt when they are extended or compressed anyway, if I put my knee up there, it's going to hurt when I stand up, and more than it usually does even. So I just had to remind myself to put it down. Well, yeah. I did say at the beginning of this that there would be a lot of sanding, and I kept to my word. I didn't expect it to be like this. When I was hoping that this stuff would cure hard enough to sand, it more than exceeded the hard enough expectation. It's definitely hard enough. Great. And sometimes that happens too. Holding the piece kind of tightly for a while results in hand cramps. Yay. I can tell there's progress here. I'll show it to you after I gum up this piece of sandpaper. You can see the difference in thickness between the circle where it's thicker and here where it's thinner, where I'm trying to make it go away. That those things happen when you're old too. You make groany noises. It was a groany noise. Well, after messing around with this for as long as I have, I can see that there is progress. It is getting to the point where I can begin to wonder it has feathered enough to not be visible. Some of the other fillers I've used, they didn't feather, which means that the edge of it, like this edge here, would be visible. If it's feathered, like if someone were doing auto body filler and stuff, the edges of the filler are invisible where they meet the metal. Be the case here. I won't really know until I paint it, though, will I? If I'm just sort of saying I'm satisfied with how this looks because I'm really satisfied with how it looks, or whether I'm saying that because I don't feel like doing this anymore. You know, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to prime this as is because I can't feel those edges with my fingernail or with the nail point. And I think that I can. I think I'm going to prime it, and I've done this before. You know, priming something, and then it either looks okay or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, well, then just more sanding, right? Just have to sand the primer off, and that comes off pretty quickly. Yeah, I can. It's still a blob. Feel that right here. I can detect that this edge. Really, it's not good. So I'm gonna have to grind away on that a little bit longer yet. Sorry, everybody. I just need to. It needs to come down from where it is. Okay, that using the light from here. I think what's actually happening is that it's not so much that there's a lump here, is that there's actually a little bit of that's a that's the reason it's not disappearing is that the plastic is higher there. So it's not just the circle, but it's also something here. So I am going to stop and prime it as is. Give this a little bit more going over here. This one looks pretty scuzzy, but I think it'll be okay once it's. But as I said, if after it's primed it still doesn't look good, then I'll just sand it some more, no matter how annoying it is for those people watching. So this is the back. This is where it attaches to the side. I'm not sure if it's the side of the other one, but just to show you how it goes, this is upside down. This goes in like that. Okay. So that goes there. But on this side, this shows, and this little bit of seam here. There's just a little bit of seam there. That's showing that I don't want it to show. On either side of these little veins, the veins here hide the seam really well. No, actually, I don't. I never worked on this before I left. Just right up in front there where the seam was showing a little bit. Sanding it down, and I'm going to use, on this I am going to use the really fine sandpaper, the polishing stuff to polish the surface. And then these will have to be washed in alcohol as well. To minimize any seam showing in the radiator grid up in front here. Tip of a nail. And I think what I'm catching here is just little bits of excess cement that might have oozed out. Really scratching the plastic. I'm just hopefully it'll just wash off. Same thing here. Just a little bit of a seam showing in the very front where the two parts came together that I'm not happy with. Just sort of take that down and then polish it, and then run the nail point along the front of that as well. Yeah, on the back, it really shows on the back there. Didn't look at the back of the other one. I probably should do that. You can see the seam there. Two halves came together. because of the grids, the lines on it, because it's a radiator. It's hard to clean that up without messing it up. Oh yeah, I just stopped talking there for a while. Huh, how about that? And there wasn't any music playing, and I'm somewhat off on. Hi, Enforcer. Oh no, what happened with your group? Enforcer's playing a D&D game, and apparently something happened while I was gone. Created your first barbarian. Yeah, it's interesting to play something like that, especially if you've been using magic users as your characters all along. It really is a challenge, I think, as a player. We've been really fortunate with our show because we've held our group together now for over a year. Part of it's a little bit easier because, when you're family, you don't have much choice. No, dishonesty is never, yeah. So the stuff that was happening outside of the game can get in the way of if the players can't trust each other. I mean, not trust each other as players. Sometimes that happens because you're playing a player type, who's not trustworthy. But when it happens in real life, that's too bad. You know, usually there's no point to lying anyway. I just have to say that. Sometimes, it's like maybe sometimes you lie because you don't want to get into a thing. Like someone says, "How you doing?" And you're really feeling terrible. But you say, "I'm feeling okay," because you don't want to get into a whole thing about why you're feeling terrible. Like me, like my knee hurts, right? I'm not going to get into a whole big thing about why my knee hurts or how it's affecting me because you don't care and you don't have to care. So I'll lie to you and say, I'm feeling fine. But it's different if it's something that can affect the people involved. Okay. Yeah, in a situation like that, just be honest about what's going on. I'm really sorry that happened because I know you were really excited about getting the game going again. And hopefully your group can get past it. So tell me, why did you make a barbarian and what are you going to do with it, with that character? And thanks for joining in because I totally ran out of things to talk about. I was just muttering. I even stopped muttering to myself about what I was doing here, which is trying to get the seam lines to pretty much disappear from these radiator parts. Cemented them together. like a little ridge of adhesive kind of welled up in the seam. That's why it's turning white as I'm running this over it. It's catching it and spreading it around. It'll wash off. I am hoping that that's what happens. I'm not rubbing the plastic at all. Yeah, I understand that. Just wasting everybody's time like that it really is inconsiderate. And if there's a really good reason, you know, like I fell down walking my dog and tore up my knee and my hand when I fell, and I had to have it bandaged. I'm just saying that because that happened to me once. It's a real inconvenience. Dog wrapped a leash around my legs and bolted. It was unpleasant. But I avoided a head injury, which is good because when you're old and you get a head injury, then it swells up and kills you. It actually does. It's really kind of a dangerous thing. So I just tore up my hand and my knee where I landed, some time ago. I was just saying that because that's a good excuse. Oh, okay. That was quick. No, I was just talking about if you're going to hold people up, you shouldn't just, it's a very rude thing to do unless you've got a good reason. And so I was just telling a story about how one of our dogs once wrapped its leash around my legs and bolted off. And, well, down I went and I messed up my knee and my hand where I landed. And I was just saying that, that was a good excuse for being late. But unless you've got a good excuse, like the dog knocked me down and I hurt myself, you're just being rude. I'm sure there are other reasons why, not necessarily having to do with dogs knocking you down. I don't know why I started talking about that. I don't have anything to talk about today. I've been gone for 2.5 weeks, and I don't feel like talking about what it was like taking care of a family member who had foot surgery. That wasn't all that much fun or interesting. Not as much fun and interesting as watching me. Yeah, it's just disappointing. So you think the group's going to be able to get back together okay? Was there like an apology maybe or something? Anyway, thanks for joining in. I know I was gone for a while, and I really appreciate you coming back. And I should be, well, I don't know. Next week could be a little weird too, because I'll be doing dog sitting, which isn't quite as intensive as being in another state taking care of somebody after foot surgery, but you never know. Sometimes they just misbehave. I think they'll be okay. Okay, that hurts. So you're not sure how it's going to turn out yet. Oh, yeah, you don't need to look at those. Here, look at these. Those are the things that I've been sanding these came out okay. These didn't come out very well at all. And I don't know about this. I've been sanding away at this, and I can't really feel any issue with my fingernail. In this case, my finger being here. This is my non-professional, non-studio here. No, at that point, you're right. If other people are that involved, you don't need to be involved in that kind of drama. But, people should just say, sorry, I screwed up. I really shouldn't have lied. I'm going to try really hard not to do that again. And then hopefully get on with it so that you can enjoy your game. There's a little piece of like some of the filler splashed up there where it shouldn't be. Oh, they work okay. Yeah. Sometimes you need to do these things in person, right? Not just send a text. We get so used to doing instant whatever it is nowadays, whatever social media, just talking on social media. You forget how important it is to do some things in person. Like, it's always kind of weird. You see this group of people walking down the street. No, don't worry about it. You're not rambling at all. That was a significant event that could have messed up the whole game. But I do find it kind of amusing to see this group of people walking down the street. There's like 4 of them together, right? And they're all staring at their phones. Hopefully while they're staring at their phones, they're not stumbling into something or knocking into things. But instead of interacting with each other, maybe they are. Maybe that's how they're talking with each other while they're walking is by some sort of message on their app. But no, I mean, apologizing should be done face to face. All right, what I'm going to do next is a little bit of marginal cleaning up. There, I'm throwing things in the bucket. Let me bring this down. These pieces are, I think they're ready to be primed. And if there's any additional issue, with where the filler is, like if I didn't sand it down enough, then now these, instead of moving on to painting, I will be doing yet more not very relaxing, boring sanding. But I'm going to wash these pieces with some isopropyl alcohol and adhere them to a piece of cardboard with some tape that is designed to not pull paint off, because they need to be primed on both sides. And I'm going to prime the inside, the part that shows the least first, and then turn them over and prime the other. And hopefully that will work. Yeah, if you need to, you can always start a new one. I'm going to need to take a quick break here. Occasionally that happens in life. and it won't take very long. It'll be way less than 10 minutes. I promise I will try to make it less than 10 minutes. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get a stretch and take care of some a bio issue here. And then I'll be right back. And we'll wash these and get them taped to a piece of cardboard so that they can be primed. That's going to be the next step. So I'll be back in just a few minutes. So you can admire the just stare at these pieces. Oh, here, I'll put Porco Rosso here too, so you can see. Eventually I will be painting this display model of Porco Rosso. Be right back. Okay, well, I'm not sure. Oh, hold on. I'm not sure that what I'm doing is going to be any better. whole nother system that you're working with. Powered by the apocalypse. Wow. These pieces of cardboard that I use. White on one side, okay, and I use this to test different colors of paint against a primer without priming, okay, because I've got some white primer, and like here, I just spray them on the white to see whether I like that color better or this one. This one's a better color than that, but this was the right color for whatever the purpose was that I think was the inside of some of the Apollo pieces. Oh, really? Okay, that's pretty cool. Of course, it says that they're working with a D6 system of gameplay. I don't know why I'm perseverating over this. We get so many boxes. That there's pieces of cardboard everywhere. And here I am dithering over what piece of cardboard I'm going to use to put these pieces on. So, I mean, that's just silly. So, there. I'm going to be actually doing two priming things. Way at the very beginning of the stream, I showed you these. These are going to turn into flames. And we have some yellow. There it is. Yep. Some yellow matte primer. It was really hard to find and stupidly expensive even. I don't understand why. But instead of painting this all with yellow paint, because the paints that we have, I mean, they're nice yellows, but it's a lot of surface area, and it's hard to get the yellow to cover. Sometimes it takes two coats. I'm going to use that yellow primer. And again, I'm going to tape these down because otherwise, when I spray them, it'll go boop, and then that's a problem. And I'm just going to use regular painter's tape on this because we're having relaxing taping things onto cardboard with Dyson Dungeons. I can't believe it. I spent no kidding, I spent 2 hours doing nothing but sanding down these little circles, and they still are not, I mean, they're just barely acceptable. Sometimes things take forever when they should take practically no time at all. I apologize for that, but it needed to be done because the circles were in places where they just distorted the piece. They just didn't look right. They looked terrible. Now I can move these around and they won't fall out. Okay. You have to take a look at what the die rolls mean. That all makes a lot of sense. Okay, so between now and Friday, I'm going to paint those yellow. And then depending on how the rest of this goes or how much time it takes, I'll be assembling some of this, okay, and maybe even painting some of the things that aren't going to be assembled. But I'll talk about that a little later. I'm getting chilled down here. It isn't as cold as it was last week, where I was taking care of a family member who had foot surgery. It got down to minus 29 one night. minus 29 Fahrenheit. For those of you who use Celsius, it's way cold. Very, very, very cold. I think it was approaching the point where negative Celsius and negative Fahrenheit are the same number. I think that's closer to minus 60, though. But yeah, it was really horribly cold. And worse yet, I had to get up and drive. And, you know, the car was that temperature. So I need to get some paper towels here. I should be using a piece of cloth to do this, not a paper towel. But I was looking for one, and I knew I had some around, like some old bed sheets or pillowcases or something that I cut up into rags, which are really good. And I had it's a whole can. I'm guessing it's in one of the cabinets behind me back here, that it just got buried ages ago and I hadn't been using it. So there it was. Clean these first. There's just a lot of dust from the sanding that doesn't just blow off. Pretty effective at taking it off. Well, we'll see how this all looks after it's primed. I may end up, like I said, and I'll apologize way in advance, I may end up just ending up having to sand these yet even more. And if I do, well, then I do. This one didn't have any sanding on it, but it still needs to be cleaned. The people who are really good at this, okay, get really OCD about cleaning their parts. I didn't mean that in a disparaging way at all. It's like put on rubber gloves, wash it down with alcohol, don't touch it again. You don't want your finger oils on the part. And actually, you really should do that. But I haven't. I don't know how this one's going to turn out. I'm really concerned that I end up spending like another hour and a half on just this little part alone, trying to get that spot there sanded down adequately. It seems okay now. It seems like what's there has feathered nicely and won't show once it's painted, but I don't know. But I'm concerned about this part because I want this to be removable. So you take it off and you'd be able to see the bottom of it, this part here. And if it doesn't look good, then I'm just going to have to keep at it. So you may see me spending a lot of time on Friday continuing to work on that little bit. But it's not, I don't know if I'm using, if I really knew what I was doing, it probably would be done by now, and it'd probably be done better than what I've done. But once again, this is an old guy who doesn't really know what he's doing, who is trying to make models that look good. And also advertise. I need to advertise Dice and Dungeons. I should do that now. Dice and Dungeons is a group of family and friends, and our main purpose is not whatever this is. Our main purpose is our Dungeons and Dragons show. This is a spin-off. It's kind of like one of those bad spin-offs that happens with TV shows that were, they were okay. And then they did a spin-off because for whatever reason. They thought it would be, somebody had a contract that needed to be honored. I'm not sure what, but they did a spinoff, and the spinoff turned out not to be all that great. But there it was anyway. It happened anyway, and people kind of watched it and all. This is kind of what that is. This is, sometimes one shots are really the best way to play those if you're developing a new character and you're using a new system that you hadn't used much before. What? Something just fell that shouldn't have fallen. I'm not sure why. Zombie themed. I see. Okay. That sounds like fun. But a one shot is pretty good because it doesn't obligate you. If it works, if it doesn't work, you just have fun with it, but it doesn't obligate you to try to continue. If it does work, then one can always continue it. Okay. It's like doing the entertainment equivalent of that would be. Okay, I'm trying to get this. I hope this doesn't show too much when it's done. Just there's a little bit of a, oh yeah, this is mainly just stuff that's in there. It's cleaning up okay. Getting these little grooves here. Sometimes things are designed to be one shot, like we did a Halloween special once that was just amazing. I keep telling our DM that she needs to just show it every year. I don't know why it doesn't happen. Maybe because, she doesn't listen to me when I talk about things and just say you should do that. Maybe, I don't know why not. I mean, it was a really amazing thing. It was really intense. I mean, as players, just getting into the scenario and playing our characters. Well, if it's something that could get your group together or keep your group together, sometimes it's worth doing just for the relationships. And you never know; it might end up being fun, or maybe not. But a one shot is a really good way to test something if you're not sure, or if you haven't played it much before and you need to experiment with the rules, because it gives you a good way to test things out. Okay, that isn't quite as good as it isn't as good as I want it to be good. I need to find my sharp nail. I'm just going to mess with this a little bit more. But our Halloween one shot was just incredibly intense. I mean, as players, we even we knew we were playing a game, but it even became frightening for us. Our DM did an amazing job designing it and getting us through it. It was probably the best D&D session I've ever been in. Maybe that's really true. Yeah, well, our group didn't need a break from each other because it's put off our recording schedule significantly, but everybody's gone all the time lately. I shouldn't say everybody's gone all the time. Somebody is gone, and then they get back and somebody else is gone because of just mostly family things and sometimes some travel. You know, get an opportunity to do some things. You get an opportunity to go on a cruise for a week. Who can say no to that, right? I could. Sometimes I just like to be home. Okay, that looks good now. Whatever I did, it worked, which is not something that often happens. Let's see if I can get the other one to look okay. No, this doesn't look okay on this side. I'm gonna start making sighing noises sooner than later here. You know, sometimes people want different things, but you just you kind of compromise. Sometimes you do what they want, and then you do something what the other person wants. And in the end, everybody gets what they want, but not all at the same time. So I hope that works out for you. But you were talking about how you made a barbarian. How does your barbarian fit into this? Response from Enforcer. So our Dungeons and Dragons show continues 3 times a month. Live stream. That's not a live stream. It's a stream with a live chat. 2:00 on Sundays, and all of the old episodes show up on YouTube. And also you can listen to them as a podcast, which I know is more convenient sometimes. Okay, for the one shot. So our show, you need to watch our show or listen to it or both. And if you can't catch it with the live chat, I really encourage you to go to YouTube and catch up with some of them. It's just a really entertaining show. Okay, it's not just us playing a game. It is produced as a show. And so we try to keep it interesting and entertaining all the time. We really get into being our characters while we're playing. And that's kind of fun for us, but I know it's also cool for people who are paying attention, watching it. Giant half, oh my. That's pretty fun. A half vampire barbarian from space. How could you not enjoy that? I mean, sometimes those mixtures of things can be a lot of fun. My favorite character, although I'm not sure everybody who played with it, in the game along with it, was a dwarf ghost pirate bard. Well, if you're giant, you need to be able to throw things. You need to be able to, like boulders and parts of buildings, if not entire buildings. Okay, that sounds like a lot of fun. Especially as a one shot. to just put together a character that combines so many different things and try to make it work. It can just be a lot of fun. Sure. It's really pretty good, but not quite. This sometimes, and this is a pretty well designed model, in terms of the detail and sometimes even the way the parts are formed. But then, if you're making things so that they need to come together, you would really like it if the designers thought that through, so that the the seams the seams where the parts are cemented together were hidden. People sew clothes that have hidden seams on them. I don't know why the glue seams are not invisible. The submarine was presented that way, and it was mostly true. It was designed so that the cement seams or the adhesive seams, yeah, you really have to work to see the seam now, were invisible. So many models, most models actually, like you glue the two halves of a fuselage together, and what have you got? You got a big seam right down the middle of it, which is not how a real airplane is. And in this particular case, they did a nice job of hiding the seam on the outside here, because there's like this little flange that goes right over the seam for almost the entire span of it, except for the very, very bit on the front. But then where the radiator is here, okay, in the front and the back, no, they're definitely not hidden, and they're definitely not supposed to be there. So I think in terms of my modeling, a sailor, have the other players thought about how what characters? Oh my. Okay, well, you're in trouble if you ever get hurt. AB plus blood type. You had to roll for it, and you ended up with no one can give you a transfusion blood type. You're going to have to be very careful. Oh, it's just a rare blood type, like it's as opposed to like an O or an O positive, which is not incompatible with other blood types. But if you're an AB, then there can be almost sort of like an allergic reaction, in a sense, an immune reaction to other blood types. So if you're okay, so are your zombies going to eat brains, or do they? You have to be careful what you eat. Then I'm sorry. No, never mind. I was thinking of vampires. I was thinking if you were a vampire and you had a rare blood type, if you would get an autoimmune response if you sucked on somebody with the wrong blood type. That's a good question. What do you think would happen if you were a vampire and you had a rare blood type that would have like an immune reaction to most other blood types, do you have to make sure that you check the blood type of your victim? Okay. So you're a universal donor, but okay. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. I always thought it went the other way. I thought that the O was the universal donor. I don't know now. I'm probably not going to look it up. I'm just not going to offer an opinion because I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to lead anybody astray about blood types and transfusions. This is not a medical science show. Not can't offer anybody medical advice other than, stay healthy. No, you don't. Oh, you should. Yeah, you should probably find out. Although if you needed a transfusion, they wouldn't trust what you told them anyway. Even if you had like a blood type bracelet or something, they would test just to be sure. Well, I'm not sure this is going to get any better than it is. I want this model to be an A-level model, not like a B plus. And so it's just little things like the seams on the radiator here that I'm finding just really difficult and annoying. And I end up taking like a half hour doing nothing but cleaning up these parts. At this pace, it'll be sometime in 2026 before this model is done. I'm not making a prediction. I'm just expressing a little frustration with my own pace. Oh, no kidding. When you were little, you had. That must have been really rough you, when you were little, maybe, you might, hopefully you were too young to remember some of it, but really, really scary for everybody around you. Yeah, I didn't know that. Hopefully you haven't had to repeat that experience. Okay, I'm going to start sticking these on the cardboard to get ready for priming. I only had to have transfusions once, get into a whole personal story or anything, but I got hit by a car once. And that was not good. I would recommend against it. If you have the opportunity to not be hit by a car, definitely take that chance to not be hit by a car. Okay. But yeah, I had to get a lot of blood replaced done. Yeah, the car won the fight, and that was just fine. The car came out fine. But yeah, I was unconscious, so I don't remember it happening. But I was told that I did have the opportunity to get a good deal of transfusion going. Well, thanks for joining in. I will be back on Friday, Enforcer, and yeah, hopefully by then, maybe you'll even have some good news about how your friends are getting along. I hope that's settling for them. Okay. You'll be able to get back to playing sooner than later. But thanks for joining in. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you again on Friday. I'm taping these on here because that when they're sprayed, these are very light pieces and they go flying. And I prefer to not have them flying around. I prefer to not lose them. And so I tape them down like this. They need to be primed on both sides. So after they're primed on this side, they'll flip them over. Hopefully the tape will still be viable. If not, I'll put some more down. And then, yeah, these are numbered. These parts here, these radiators, I'll show you, 3 joins with 6 and goes on this side, 4 joins with 5 and goes on this side so that they're not interchangeable. Okay. So to keep track of them when they were separate, I numbered them 3, 6, 4, 5. Okay. And then I glued them together, and I'm still keeping them separate. But I want, I can't prime them on here because it'll cover up the numbers. So I'm going to write some numbers here. 3 plus 6. And then I'm going to cover those numbers with tape. So that when I prime them and the primer gets all over everything, I can pull the tape off and reveal the number. This one is 3, 6. 3 plus 6. Just a memory aid for an old guy. Well, up arrow meaning that the numbers are below the piece. These all get primed on both sides, and I'm priming, and when I do the painting, I'll be doing the same, is doing the side that shows the least first, so that if the paint is marred in some way, it will be in a way that doesn't show very much. Okay. So these are ready. I've made this joke so many times, I'll just say it again. I can't help myself. These are ready for prime time. I'm going to use some good quality model quality primer on these. Try to get it covered pretty well. Flip them over after it's dried. Paint the other side. Hopefully these things that I filled and sanded will look okay. If not, I will have to sand it down and reprime it. And we'll find out on Friday. How it looks, whether they need some additional prep work or not so that they look okay. I'm really hoping that they do. And if not, then there'll be some more annoying and not terribly relaxing sanding as I continue to prep the pieces. Before I assemble these 3, the sides and the bottom, like these 3, to make this enclosure for the engine. Okay. And after this then if this looks good, okay, I will assemble them. And after they're assembled, I'll sand down the seam that will appear here so that that seam doesn't show. May need to prime it again. I don't, oh my. Should I? No, I was almost thinking of assembling it before priming it. I wonder if I should do that. Let me wonder about that. I want to paint it all as one piece, and I'm not going to paint the inside or the outside until I actually could assemble this. I could assemble these pieces. Because if I assemble them after they're primed, I'm going to be sanding down some bits of this, which would probably be reprimed, and that always could potentially. No, but then again, no, I can't. I have to take that chance because if these look bad, if these things look bad after they're primed, then I'm going to have to sand them down. So that's what's going to happen. Is if they look, and I'm just going to take my chance at maybe having to reprime some of this a little bit after it's assembled. But there's a good chance that these won't look good after they're painted, and they'll need to be sanded down. And if this were assembled, it will be next to impossible to do that. It's difficult enough to do that unassembled, not disassembled because it hasn't been assembled yet, but unassembled. And if I need to do a little bit of repriming, maybe I'll just do what I need to do then. Yeah, that's why I talk to myself about what I'm doing. Is sometimes I don't know what this is going to look like once it's painted. I have to find out. So something needs to be redone a little bit. It's a whole lot better to redo this when I can still get to it than when I can't. But it'll just slow things down. But that's not a real surprise on this stream, is it? When things have to, sometimes I had to like totally disassemble something and start over. I've done that a couple of times already with this model, like with the cage around the cockpit. But these are going to get primed now. Not now, but between now and Friday. So that on Friday, if everything goes well, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, but if it does, if it goes well, then I'll be able to paint the gold, the metallic on these, the radiators. Okay. If it goes well with the priming, I'm actually going to do that early on and do that and paint those because those are radiators and they're to be painted a metallic color. And I'm going to do that early in the stream so that it dries so that I can tape them to mask the part that's painted metallic. I'm not going to take that off, but the ridged part for the radiator, if this goes well and the seams don't show and it looks all right, then I'm going to paint those early in the stream on Friday so that the paint will dry so that I can mask the radiator part effectively so that I can paint the inside and the outside that bright red color, which is similar to this color. It's molded in the color it's supposed to end up being, but that that's done if people aren't going to be painting or not painting it very much. And I'm trying to make this look, good. The insides of all of these parts are also going to be painted in metallic. And I have to decide, it would be, I don't know, when this was made, would it be aluminum? I think I'm going to paint it just the kind of the bright aluminum color. I think I am. I think I'm going to paint it the brighter aluminum shade rather than the darker duraluminum shade or dark aluminium. Let's see the color I've got here. I'm just talking to myself about how this is going to go. It's aluminium. It's duraluminum. And steel is way too dark. Silver, I'm not going to do that. There's dark aluminium. I think I'm going to paint the radiators aluminium. I'm saying that because that's how it's spelled, because the paint came from Europe. So it's aluminium, or we just say aluminum. And I think I'm going to paint the inside of the cowling duraluminum, which is a little bit darker shade. And I'm going to do that because it probably would have been made out of it. I mean, aircraft were made out of this duraluminum thing. And this is the cowling, the enclosure for the engine. So it's going to be pretty robust. Yep, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this a little bit lighter shade than that. Unless I change my mind, in which case it'll be different. But I think that's what I'll do. And then, we'll just see how it goes. Either I'll begin to make some really pretty decent progress on this and be able to move on to the main airframe, the fuselage, which fortunately does not have a seam running down the middle. And some of the control surface areas, like the vertical stabilizer, for some reason does have to be put together, and there'll be a seam that runs all along it. So I'll have to take care of that. And then these A9, 10, 11, and 12, these are tiny little pieces that are structural supports, like little braces for the horizontal stabilizer to the fuselage. And there are some A9 through A12, some instructions in Japanese. I need to translate those because it's probably telling me something important about how those are supposed to go on. And I mean, they wouldn't have all of this here unless it were, important, like this up here. These are careful instructions that say, if you're going to paint this instead of just leaving it in its base red color, make sure that you very carefully mask the inside. So I'm not doing it that way. Okay. I'm not assembling it and then painting it. I'm assembling this part and getting rid of the cement seams and then painting this and this separately before installing the engine. So I don't have to worry about masking the whole thing other than the inside of it, which will be painted duraluminum. I test fit the engine and it will go in after this is assembled. I'm not going to attach this with cement. I want this to be a maintenance hatch. This will be attached with an adhesive cement, but the seam won't matter because it's designed to be a separate item. That'll go on after the engine is put in. Okay, so I'm talking to myself about the steps, is I'm going to prime all of these and then see if I need to do additional sanding on them, especially this piece up here, because this one, if this is removable, this is going to show more than anything. That piece might take some additional work. These three pieces will be assembled here into this kind of tub, and then I'm going to sand down the seams, reprime it if I need to, and then paint the inside silver, mask it, paint the outside. Because of the way I'm doing this, I might just have to start moving on to this just to do something while I'm waiting for like cement to dry or primer to dry or something like that. I'm not sure. If not, if I don't move on to these steps, if there's time left after I fail to get things done here, I'm going to work on flame walls. These are going to be flame walls, and these flame walls will almost certainly show up in our show. So I hope I do a decent job of it. These were printed on the new printers, 3D printers that we got that are behind me, and the detail is just really amazing. There aren't any, they don't even show any little lines. I don't know how it's going to go. I was just babbling about what I'm going to try to do, and whether what I try to do is going to happen or not will depend on whether it works or not, which depends on how these things look after they're primed, after I sand it down. I hopefully effectively, the little circles that showed up in the molding process. Yeah, what can I do other than the best I can? Like Oogie says when asked, what are you going to do? I'm going to do the best I can. So. Watch our Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, almost forgot. The exhaust pipes here. So the exhaust pipes that go on the side of the engine. I'm going to make an attempt to turn like a slight, very light bluish wash on the parts that would be heated, because metallic parts, especially if they've, exhaust parts, if when they get hot from the exhaust, they turn kind of a bluish color. And I think if I can pull that off, it would look pretty good. I probably should have done that today, because if it doesn't work, then I need to repaint them, and probably will need to reprime them, because these speed paints dissolve in the paint above it. But I didn't. So it happens when you're gone for a couple of weeks and just kind of remembering what one is doing. But yeah, I just spent 3 hours. And all I managed to accomplish was sort of maybe adequately sanded down these things that I filled in. That's just amazing. Well, sometimes things go like that. Maybe something will happen on Friday. Maybe I'll actually get something done. I wouldn't count on it, but join in on Friday anyway at more or less 10, just to be curious about whether or not I'm able to start accomplishing anything on these models. Okay, on this model. And maybe I will. Maybe I'll get some parts assembled. Maybe I'll get some silver aluminum paint on the outsides of these radiators and mask them and get them ready to be painted red. Okay. Maybe if these two parts look good, I'll be able to paint the insides of them duraluminum and mask those and get them ready to be painted red. Okay. And then I have to wait for the cement to set for these, if I don't have to do too terribly much otherwise. So maybe there'll be some painting on Friday. I don't know. We'll see how these parts look after they've been primed. Oh, there will be painting on Friday, because if these are failures, then I'm going to do some sanding, and at some point I'll just say that's enough. But these I'm going to start. If worse comes to worse, or even if better comes to better, these will be painted yellow, and I will start to make them look like flames. And I can't promise that they'll look very good because I'm not artistic, but they'll look flamey, at least on camera. Watch our Dungeons and Dragons show. Please do that. Our D&D show is the heart of Dice and Dungeons. It is an amazingly good show. If you can't catch it with a live chat when it's on Twitch, you can watch it on YouTube or listen to it as a podcast. There are lots of old episodes that you should catch up on. And you can become a follower on Twitch of this stream and the stream for the Dungeons and Dragons show. And I would like everybody to recruit at least 100 other people. It's a pyramid scheme. Recruit at least 100 other people to become followers or YouTube sponsors or both. And each one of those recruits another 100 people. And before long, there'll actually be some people, we'll have a crowd, and that would be great. And if you really like what you're seeing or hearing, you can go to patreon.com/diceanddungeons and become a patron. And you'll get access to our DM notes and our improv warm-ups, and more recently, Hot Takes from Cold Reads, where we ask artificial intelligence to create something creative for us about our group, our Dungeons and Dragons group. Our group's name is Midnight Brunch, and it's almost always very disappointing. And we read that, we do a cold read, and then we're usually just really sad about how bad the quality was, or we think it's hilarious and we laugh at it. But you can then see artificial intelligence at work as it applies to Dice and Dungeons. Thanks, everybody. Yep, I'm glad to be back after being a couple of weeks away, and I hope to not be away again for a while. At least that's my goal. I should talk about goals and objectives again. That was really boring and kind of sad too. But yeah, I plan to be here pretty regularly now for a while, and get back to making some progress on the model. Maybe even be able to, maybe in the not too distant future, be able to go to page 3 of the instructions. Oh, at which time? Oh my, I forgot about that. I have to read these instructions. The stripes. I need to talk about the stripes. Remind me on Friday to talk about the stripes on the wings and the ailerons and the rudder, because that is an issue that needs to be decided upon. I'll leave you in suspense. Thanks again. I have to stop rambling and get on with it. Get on with priming these so that I can do something on Friday, hopefully. See you then. Bye.